Last month I played through Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The game itself was fine, but the one thing that constantly stuck out like a sore thumb was the lackluster animations. During dialogue, movement is often choppy and robotic, with gestures and body language often being recycled. Outside of dialogue, things are better, but the world barely reacts to your character. Grass doesn't move as you pass over it. Trees and bushes don't react either. Water will ripple as you move through it, but not for any of the game's creatures. Some of the creatures have very unnatural movement, and some stay in the exact same spot and do the exact same thing forever. Battles are where the animations truly shine, but I couldn't call it perfect. So when I moved on from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 into Monster Hunter World, I was pleasantly surprised to see the appealing and impressive ways that Capcom used the visuals and animations. Capcom uses these animations in three distinct ways. The first would be the way in which Capcom relays the emotions and personalities of the characters without just relying on dialogue. This isn't a major part of the game, as the story is pretty minimal and all the characters don't even have names, just titles. But you can still glean bits of their personalities, as well as your own hunters. Like how your hunter is caring towards their cat-like pal co-companion, or that they really enjoy eating, and the story cutscenes show off your hunter's skill at hunting monsters, as well as their keen intuition and protective instincts. You can also see things like the tough but delicate nature of the cat chef and the Red Riding Hood obliviousness of your handler as she constantly runs off, seemingly unaware of any danger. And while all of these things could have been put out through verbal dialogue or walls of text, sometimes it's just better to have to infer them from the actions that characters take, because what they're doing is just as important as what they're saying. Capcom also uses animations to really make the world they've created feel vibrant and alive. Lava flows and bubbles, lizards scatter as you approach them, fish swim in ponds, water rippling with their movement, wigglers dance back and forth before disappearing into the ground. The monsters are all given very natural movements, or at least they move in the way we'd expect, not like there are a lot of real-life wyverns to compare them to. The monsters sleep, eat, react to sounds. They'll react to your presence and try to sniff you out when you're hiding. During combat, you can see all the different ways these creatures battle, from huge lunges and breathing fire and rolling around and doing dive bombs. They stop and breathe heavily when tired. They puff out and roar when agitated, or sometimes just puff up. They not only fight with you, but also with each other. Turf wars pit two monsters against each other for dominance. These fights are often over the top to show how powerful these monsters really are. Your hunter also has natural interactions with the world around them, like how they slog through deep water, slide down steep surfaces, and how they react to intense heat by wiping the sweat from their brow. All of these different interactions help the game feel more than just individual parts standing on the same stage. It creates a cohesiveness that makes the game at large a much more engaging experience. The last and perhaps most significant thing that Capcom does is how they relay information through the visuals and animations. Take for instance the mantle utility items, where you can tell how much usage time is left based on how far the mantle has deteriorated. Or cooking meat, where you can tell the outcome by the reaction your hunter gives, with them holding a perfectly cooked piece of meat up to the sky, while hanging their head in shame when it's cooked poorly. Most of the things that can affect you out in the field are shown by your health and stamina meter, but are also shown visually on your character. When your stamina runs low while sprinting, your hunter will slow down and stumble, then proceed to stop and catch their breath. Elemental blights are given visuals on your hunter's body. Water blight has you dripping water. Thunder blight has small blue electrical bolts zapping around you. And ice blight has you covered in frost. The same goes with status effects. The burning status effect will have you covered in flames while you try and pat yourself out. Poison has your character flail wildly and get purple glop around their body. When monsters get poisoned, you can tell by the purple glop dripping from their mouths. But it's not just that, you can read pretty much the entire flow of battle based on the actions and appearances the monsters take. Depending on what they do, you can tell when monsters become enraged or when they're going to change the way they attack. For instance, when the Anjanath becomes enraged, it will expose its nose bone. Or when the Basilgeuse glows red, all of its bomb scales will begin to detonate immediately after being shed instead of on impact. Sometimes it can be a combination of both, like how the Devil Hoe will swell and become red when enraged, but will also start using Dragon Breath attacks. Once you're able to recognize these changes, you can learn when to become more offensive or defensive. Capcom also makes use of certain monster introduction cutscenes to help teach different mechanics and tactics. These can be simple things like how you can swing off wedge beetles or that you can stun monsters with your slinger, to more complex tactics like luring monsters with the slinger, then dropping objects on top of them, or using Noivos screeches to get a Diablos to drag monsters into the quicksand pit. This game does have more traditional tutorials, but it's also nice to see some of the more interesting things you can do shown off as entertaining cutscenes that can perhaps be more entertaining to pull off yourself. Hi, Lord Valrist here. I hope you enjoyed my video. Capcom's embrace of animations are a really big reason I like this game so much. Not that everything is done perfectly. A lot of these things might not even be noticed in the heat of battle, and there are mistakes here and there. But putting this much effort into the animations and what they accomplish with them is something that can be truly appreciated, and I hope more people are willing to use them in the way that Monster Hunter World does.